This is our third example set on jQuery selectors. In this set we're going to be discussing pseudo selectors, which are a special type of selector that can help you narrow down a query on elements. I've made a few updates to our markup in this example. I've added two new list items. One I've given a style of display none, and the other I've given a style of visibility hidden. So both of these are technically hidden items, which we'll be digging into deeper using pseudo selectors. If we take a look at our first example here, I'm kind of going to go through this one in reverse. It's more elegant to read. The query is li first, which is basically saying grab all the list items on the page, but only return the first one of those. And we're storing that return in our first item variable. If we check out the console output on that, we can see that we're only returning one list item, and it's the first list item which contains our first link. Our second example is kind of similar. Here we're calling the equal pseudo selector, which is a way of saying the index. We want to grab the element whose index is equal to whatever parameter we're passing it. So in this example, again, we're selecting all our list items, and we want to grab the fourth item, or the item whose index is equal to 4 out of that set. And we're storing it in our fourth item variable. If we move back over to our console output and we check the log for our fourth item example, we can see that it's selecting that list item that's being highlighted. But if we check out this tooltip from Firebug, which is an XPath path, we're actually selecting the fifth list item, and that's because I forgot that the equals pseudo operator uses a 0 index, so the count starts at 0 instead of 1. In our next example, we're using the even pseudo selector. What this query is saying is grab all of the list items on the page, but from that collection only take the even numbered list items. There's also an alternative pseudo selector of odd, which would grab all the odd numbered list items or whatever element you're selecting. These are very helpful pseudo selectors if you're doing something like with a table of data and you maybe want each even numbered row of the table striped a different color. And if we take a look at the output for this example, check out our even items line and just thumb through these elements, we can see that every other element has been selected and returned. So I'm going to cover the next two examples at once because in this case they kind of work hand in hand. The first example I'm using the visible selector, and in the second example I'm using the not pseudo selector. So for this query I'm saying grab all the list items that are visible. That's pretty straightforward. In the following query I'm saying grab all list items that are not visible. And the not pseudo selector takes a parameter of another selector within its parentheses. So we could pass, instead of just passing it the visible pseudo selector, we could pass it any of the other selectors we've used up to this point, any of the CSS, attribute, pseudo selectors, or a mix of all of them. And it does an inverse of the selector that gets passed. So one thing I wanted to point out when dealing with hidden items or hidden elements is that jQuery only considers an element hidden if it has the CSS attribute of display and it's set to none, like our first hidden list item down here. If its height and width are set to 0, or it doesn't have a height or width, or if the element is a form input and its type attribute is hidden. And also if the element that's supposedly hidden, its parent has any of those attributes. So if we jump over to the console to check out our visible and hidden item output, we can see that visible is selecting everything we can see on the page. And if we drop back, it is also selecting one of our hidden list item elements, and that's going to be this list item, which just has the CSS visibility to hidden, and jQuery does not consider that actually hidden because it renders and alters the flow of the DOM. And if we check our actual hidden item query, we can see it's picking one list item, and it's not highlighting it above because it's not actually being rendered. And that is our list item that has its style of display set to none. So be careful when you're working with hidden items and you're just using visibility hidden.